Ushiya ukuthi nanihamba ngemoto eyodwa iBMW X6 kwakuyeka Senzo noma ke eka Senzo kanye naye uKelly.
Kunjalo.
That's correct.
Now, you also testified that when you got to that party venue, you realized that the preparations were still ongoing, so you decided to shoot straight to Dorothy Nyembe Park.
That's what I heard being said, yes.
Now, having performed at Dorothy Nyembe Park, you go through Soweto for some reasons, but eventually the trip is to Katlehong at Muthokozisi Twala's place, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And what was the purpose for going to Muthokozisi's home or residence?
Mina ngangazi ukuthi kiwelani kwaMthokozisi kodwa ngabona uMthokozisi engena endlini ephuma eseshintshile.
I didn't know as to what the purpose was of going there, but what I saw Mthokozisi going into the house, and when he came back, he had changed.
And after Muthokozisi had changed clothes, then you traveled to Spruit View at the off-ramp at N3 Highway to collect Tumelo Madala, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And before the 26th of October 2014, had you met Tumelo Madala before?
No, I've never met him.
And indeed, Tumelo Madala is found and picked up from the off-ramp, and then you drive towards your mom's house, correct?
Yeah,
that's correct, yes.
Now, just for clarification purposes, yesterday as you testified, you repeatedly referred to Tumelo Madala's crutches, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, that presupposes that Tumelo Madala was carrying some sort of injury that necessitated him for using crutches for the purposes of assisting him to walk.
Yeah, boy,
yes, he had a foot injury.
And that foot injury, was it in a plaster or was it just a band-aid?
A plaster cast.
And your testimony further is that having picked up Tumelo Madala, you then proceeded to your mother's house, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then upon arriving at your mother's house, just outside before you entered, you realized that you needed alcoholic drinks. Then you made a U-turn and went to a place that sells alcohol known as Kwembus, correct?
Asiyenzani U-turn. Indlela mawehla straight ibheke ezantsi.
We didn't make We didn't make a U-turn. It's just straight down the road, and then we got to Kwembus.
Now, yesterday, if you recall, we saw cans of alcohol shown to you depicted in photos 114 and 115 of Exhibit D. Do you recall those?
Yes, I do recall.
And they were cans of Heineken and Guarana, right?
Heineken and Guarana. Yes, that's correct.
And you testified that you and Kelly drank Guarana, right?
That's correct, yes.
What was Tumelo Madala drinking?
What I do remember is that there was Heineken and they were also sharing the Heineken.
Just to avoid then mentioning them one by one, what you mean is that the deceased Tumelo Madala and Mthokozisi were drinking Heineken?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, your testimony is that at that time, you had already consumed 3 cans of that Guarana, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, having drunk those 3 cans, on a scale of 1 to 10, where will you put your state of intoxication or inebriation?
10 being what?
So, what 10 being what?
How intoxicated were you having drunk those 3 Guarana cans?
So amakena amabili amathathu awenzi lutho.
Firstly, what I would like you to know is that I am not new to alcohol. So 2 or 3 cans doesn't do anything to me.
But you haven't answered my question. I don't know you. I don't know how you drink. My question is simply, based on what you say you drank that day, how were you feeling in terms of intoxication?
I wasn't drunk.
Now, I have, and will verify, I've verified that Guarana can issue, the alcohol volume is 5.5 per can. If you've taken 3, that will be about 16.5 with my rough arithmetic. I didn't do maths, I did arithmetic. Then that will be 16.5. Therefore, what I'm suggesting to you is that you were more intoxicated than you are telling us in court here.
Can you please no, you can't put that. You asked the witness about his state of sobriety or drunkenness, and she is giving you a state of that aspect you're trying to establish. But if you say you're putting it to her, then you should have examined her, because you were not there.
Indeed, my lord. Indeed, my lord. I'll revert to that point. For brevity, I'll move on, but I'll come back to it.
Just as a matter of interest about alcohol drinking in the location, especially, you're aware that some people go to a tavern, they drink, let's say, beer, and after some time they get out and they disgorge the beer by fans. You are aware of it?
I don't go to taverns.
No, I'm telling you. It's a practice. When the stomach is full, he goes out. Where's fans? He disgorges the beer, he comes back, he drinks again. It's the first time you hear it.
I thought it was done in the 80s. People today are more sophisticated than that.
Fill up the table and count the empties.
No, I know in the 80s.
Okay, fine.
The 80s, not now.
All right, it was just by the way.
And now, at the time of the incident, at your mother's house, there were the following people, and then I'm counting adults. It was yourself, Zandile Khumalo, your mother that I will refer to, Makhumalo, the deceased, Tumelo Madala, Mtogozi Sitwala, and Longwe Twala, who arrived late, and then the 2 minor children of Kelly, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now I'm gonna go straight for the jugular. You testified that a bit later, between 7 and 8:30 p.m., 2 unknown men entered your mom's residence using the kitchen door, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And your description of the first intruder is that he was shot and he had dreadlocks hairstyle, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And testified further that this intruder with dreadlocks was carrying a gun or a firearm, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
With respect to the second intruder, the description that you gave there and then was that he was not too light in complexion and that he was taller than the first, a bit taller than the first intruder, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, your story is that the first suspect pointed the firearm at the occupants of the house, that is yourselves, and demanded money and cell phones.
Yes, that's correct.
And further that, when he made such a demand, he was speaking in the Zulu language, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, if you can repeat in isiZulu exactly which words did he say when he made such a demand?
Wathi khiphani imali nama cellphone.
He said, take out money and cell phones.
And in saying or uttering those words, did the first suspect use any expletives or swear words?
No.
When he uttered those words, what was his demeanor?
Wabukakale serious.
He looked serious.
And when he uttered those words, what was the tone of his voice?
Ayiqinile.
It was firm.
Now, just for contextual purposes, what were you paying your attention to before you noticed that there were people entering the house?
Ngangibuka uKheli wayesixoxela ijoke.
Was looking, or my attention was on Kelly, who was sharing a joke to us.
Now, would you agree with me that being pointed with a gun at night in a robbery situation is a terrible and frightening ordeal?
Kunjani?
That is correct.
And the men that entered that house, that is the first and the second suspect, were complete strangers to you. You had never seen them before that day, correct?
Yebo kunjani?
Yes, that's correct.
And furthermore, you will agree with me that being pointed with a firearm by a stranger demanding money and phones was fraught with danger because there was a firearm involved.
Yebo kunjani?
Yes, that's correct.
Would I then be correct to say you were personally yourself? Were you frightened at the sight of the first suspect pointing you with a firearm and demanding money and cell phones? Were you personally frightened?
Ngafriza nje angangazi ukuthi kwenzakalani.
I just froze and didn't know as to what was happening.
And when the suspects entered the house, what was the state of illumination in the house like?
No,
Kwakukhanya yonke indawo.
there was light all over the place.
For clarification purposes, when you say it was light all over, let's break it down. The kitchen area, are you saying the lights were on in the kitchen area?
Ekitchen kwakukhanya, kukhanya dining room, kukhanya passage.
The kitchen, the dining room, as well as the passage, the lights were on.
Now, the first assailant with the firearm, or the first suspect, when he enters and at the stage where he stops and points the firearm at the people in the house, exactly where did he stand relative to the sofa, your side of the sofa, where you were sitting?
Wayime nje phambi kwethu. Ngapha kwa left.
He was just standing in front of us on the left side.
And in which hand was the firearm held by the first suspect as he pointed the firearm at the people in the house?
Lokho ke angisakukhumbuli, kodwa nje wayesikhumbile so.
That I can't recall, but he was pointing us with the fire, with it.
And the position in which he was pointing the firearm at you, what position did he point the firearm at you? Was it hands chest in front, hands to the side? What position was that?
Lokhu phambili esifubeni.
Just in front, the chest, in front of the chest.
Now, when that first suspect demands money and cell phones, did anyone from the people in the house respond to that demand?
Ha.
No.
Sorry, my lord, may I have a request?
Yeah, fine.
If I want to drink, because some
Yeah,
judges, if I want to drink water, because some judges are physical, can I
No,
drink
no,
from
okay.
here?
As long as there's no alcohol in the water.
Now, the firearm that you saw from your vantage point where you were seated, saying he was towards the left on the sofa where you were, can you describe it?
Okokuqala ibhama ngizazi.
Firstly, I am not familiar with firearms.
Engikwaziyo nje ukuthi sasiyidarknyana.
What I know is that it was darkish.
Kwakungezona le ibhama enkulu eyisindayo but sasisincane.
It was not the big, heavy firearms, but it was small.
Okay, let's break it down. A firearm is composed of 3 sections, and I'll explain them to you. The first part is the iron part, this long thing. It's called the barrel of a firearm. That's a pipe-like, hollow pipe-like, where the bullet travels to leave the firearm. What color was that part of that firearm?
Okokuqala nje right now ngazi ukuthi ukhuluma isiFrench ngoba ngiyazi nale nto oyishoyo.
Firstly, now it's like you're speaking French because I don't even understand what you're saying now.
Okay, let's break it down. In general, are you saying the whole firearm was black or blackish in color?
So umuntu uma ekhomba ngesibhamu wena uzoma utadisha isibhamu ukuthi sihloboni sinjani.
If you are pointed with a firearm, are you now going to stand and study what kind of a firearm it is?
We are going to have a problem if you answer my questions with a question because I don't answer to you.
Kodwa umbuzo wakho uma ungacacile ukuthi nguphendule kanjani.
But how do you expect me to answer your question if it is not clear?
What is it about the question that is not clear to you?
Isibhamu ngibuza ngaso ngisho ngathi ibhama ngizazi.
The firearm you are
Noma
asking.
uchaza mhlawumbe kumele ulethe isithombe usibeke la mhlawumbe uzongicacisela ngesithombe ngoba uma ulokhu wenza ngezandla angazi ukuthi wenzani.
The firearm you are asking me about, because I told you that I know nothing about firearms. Maybe if you were to put a photo in front of me and tell me, but if you explain using your hands, then I am lost.
The simple thing that I'm asking you is, if you relate to your friends that I was pointed with a firearm at an incident of a robbery, you'll say it was black and silver or the handle was brown. That's what I'm trying to ask from you. I'm not saying you are a firearm expert. You are a dancer, you are a singer, I know that.
Angisinaka ngesibhamu ukuthi sasinhloboni.
I didn't notice or take note of the firearm as to what kind it was
Noma sasinombala onjani futhi.
or what the color was.
Now, just to make sure that I understand where you were seated relative to where the person pointing the firearm was, so that perhaps we can clear this up once and for all. I'll ask that Exhibit D, photos 57 thereof, be shown to you, please.
The photo number?
It's 57, my lord,
57,
of
okay.
Exhibit D, 57 numbers.
All right.
Now, in terms of the picture, if my recollection serves me well, you and your mother, before the arrival of Longetwala, you were seated on the sofa on the left, correct?
Cha kulona iqiniso le.
No, that's not true.
Okay, that's why I said if my memory serves me well. Can you jog my memory, please?
Ngangihleli kulo sofa kwa right.
I was seated on the sofa on the right.
Thanks for that. Now, when the first suspect enters, I know that there's the beginning of the arc here. Relative to that, where was the first suspect at when you saw him pointing the firearm at the people in the house?
Njengoba ukhaphethe uphelela la uphelela khona yena wayeme phezu kwama-tiles.
Just where the carpet ends, he was standing on the tiles.
Now let's put an estimation of a distance between where you were seated and where he was. Just give me your educated guess in terms of distance.
Okokuqala imaths ngangiyizonda esikoleni. So indaba yama-measurements nama-estimation into engakwazi ukuyenza leyo.
Firstly, I hated maths at school. So when it comes to distances and measurements, that's something I'm unable to do.
Okay. Let's take a simple guesstimate from where Mr. Jonas is, the Mr. Interpreter, to the end of the big screen or somewhere relative. Can you estimate the distance from where Mr. Jonas is towards the end of the screen, or is it further than that?
Hayi nalokho kunzima nje ngoba akuyona indlu yasekhaya le.
Even that is difficult because that's not our home.
Okay,
My home.
just let me not belabor this point. Your view of the firearm as it's pointed to you, is it from the side, do you see it from this side or from the front, by the barrel?
Ngangisibona from eceleni.
From the side.
And from that vantage point, you couldn't tell the color of that firearm.
Njengoba ngisho nje ukuthi sasidarkish.
As I'm saying that it was darkish.
Let me track back to a question I asked you, and in response that too, I asked you, when the firearm was pointed at the people in the house, what was the reaction? You stated that you froze. You remember that?
Ngiyakhumbula lokho.
Yes, I remember that.
But in your testimony yesterday, you said when this thing was happening, you immediately took your phone and hid it under a cushion. Do you remember that?
Yebo ngisho njalo kodwa ngakwenza lokho emva kokuthi uLongwe amphushe.
Yes, I said so, but I did that after Longwe had pushed him.
Now, going forward, your story is that the second suspect then, in fact, let me put it this way so that we don't confuse each other. When the two suspects entered and the first one produces a firearm, Zandile Khumalo then runs to a bedroom that is opposite the kitchen, that's facing the kitchen like this, correct?
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
And your story is...
Why do you say story? Please, just say evidence. Please, we are lawyers.
Okay, all right. Your testimony or evidence is that the second suspect then follows or chases after Kelly to that bedroom, correct?
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
And in that process, Kelly gets into the room and closes the door, and the second suspect tries to push the door from the outside, correct?
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, where were you when you observed that interaction between Kelly and the second suspect?
Ngangisahleli phansi la bengibonise khona ukuthi bengihleli khona.
I was still seated at the same position that I pointed.
By the way, when did this second suspect enter the house?
Njengoba bese ngishilo ukuthi bangene belandelana. Wathi omunye mayima phambili, omunye wama ngasekhishini.
As I've already said that as they came in, they were following each other. So as the one just stood there, and then the other one stood in the kitchen.
Was the second suspect also armed with a weapon of some sort?
Angikubonanga lokho.
I didn't see that.
Now, clarify for me this. In your evidence, you say the second suspect stood next to the stove. Do you recall saying that yesterday?
Ngiyakhumbula ngisho lokho kodwa ngithe phakathi naphakathi emnyango lo ongenisela epassage.
Yes,
ukuthi kunestofu futhi khona la eceleni kwakhona.
I remember saying that, but I said it was in the middle between the door that now leads to the passage. There is a stove right there, or next to it.
Now, the second suspect does not manage to open the door where Kelly has, the bedroom door where Kelly has run to. What then happens to this second suspect if you observe that?
Njengoba bese ngichazile ukuthi akuzange ukuthi aphushe kanye noma kabili bese yayeka. Kwakuyipush and pull khona lapha emnyango.
As I already said that it was just not a matter of him only pushing once or twice and then he stopped. It was a pushing and pulling right there at the door.
Yes, I understand that, but what I'm asking is this. Once he did not succeed, after that pushing and pulling, once he didn't succeed, Kelly's still in the bedroom, right?
Mawuthi akaphumelelanga ngicela ucacisela.
If you say that he didn't succeed, if you
Ngoba
just,
mina ngibonanga mayithi akaphumelelanga or usebonise ngathi akaphumelelanga.
because I didn't see that he didn't succeed or that there were signs that he didn't succeed. If you can just explain that to me when you say he didn't succeed.
did he manage to enter that room where Kelly Khumalo was?
Cha.
No.
Then my question is that after that, when he couldn't enter that room, what happened to him? Where did he go?
Lalela njengoba bese ngichazile ukuthi kwakuyi action eyenzeka laphana. So eya elandela uKelly ekamereni and then uLongwe waphusha lo wama-dreads wamusala emuva sasukuma sonke sihamba dudula saya nabe kitchen.
Listen here, what then happens, all of that was like in an action. So when he did that, that's when Longwe stood up and then pushed this one. And we all then stood up and pushed them, went with them towards to the kitchen.
Now, just to track back a bit, when the second suspect entered the house, the first suspect says, money and cell phones, we want money and cell phones to that effect. What did this second suspect say, if anything at all?
No, he didn't say anything.
And at the time of this incident, where are the children, Kelly Khumalo's children?
Ngikhumbula kahle uChristian wayelokhu yaphansi phezulu kodwa uThingo ngase ngimthathile ngawumlalisa ekamereni.
If I remember well, Christian was moving up and down, but I had already taken Tingo to go to the bedroom to sleep.
Now, let's come to this aspect of Longwe Twala pushing the first suspect out or away and then him leaving the house via the kitchen door. Now, the person that you say Longwe Twala pushed is the first suspect, the one with dreadlocks and the one in possession of a firearm, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, when you say Longwe stands up, approaches this first suspect and pushes him, the person with the firearm at the time, is the firearm still pointed at the people in the house?
Wasikhomba kodwa uLongwe mayemphushela le kusho ukuthi sasuka kuthina ngoba wayesehlehle.
Yes, he pointed the firearm at us, but then when Longwe pushed him aside, then it means that it was now not pointing at us anymore because he moved.
Let's perhaps stick with this photo 57. The first aspect, according to your testimony, is pushed by Longwe Twala. Remind me again where Longwe Twala was seated.
uLongwe wayehlezi la ecaleni. Sofeni.
Longwe was seated where the witness is pointing, right at the beginning of the couch.
And when he pushes the first suspect, where does he push him to? Or against what? Relative to that picture?
Kulesi sithombe akubonakali kodwa wampushela epassage.
It's not visible on this photo, but he pushed him towards the passage.
If I may request that perhaps photo 58 be shown. I'll come to that. There's a photo that I made. I'll come back to that. And now, when Longwe pushes this first suspect away, what does the first suspect do? What's the result?
Wahlehla wayemuva.
He moved backwards.
And the second suspect, what does he do as Longwe pushes the first suspect?
Ngokukhumbula kwami wayeseselapha emnyango.
As far as I can recall, he was still there at the door.
But what I'm asking is, did he take any action or he didn't?
Angisakukhumbuli.
I can't recall that well.
Back your indulgence, we're looking for we back your indulgence. I'm looking for the accounting for it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, but perhaps the previous question to clarify, Longwe is seated towards the right of that sofa. He stands up and pushes. There's what looks like a heater there. Relative to that, where does the first suspect, in fact, what happens to him when he's pushed? Does he fall off? Does he stumble? What happens to the first suspect when he's pushed?
Wahlehla nje wabonisa ukuthi ibalance ayikho kahle.
He just moved backwards as the witness is just indicating that he wasn't that well balanced.
Now, let's make this make sense. the first suspect in possession of a firearm gets pushed by somebody from the house in a robbery situation, yet he does nothing after he's been pushed.
It is a confused matter. That matter should be left for argument.
Speculation. Because you are saying he does nothing.
And
And she is saying he was pushed, and from her observation, he must have lost his balance. That's
I
what
leave
she
that
said.
for argument at the close of the case. Now, before Longwe pushed the first suspect away or off, did you at any stage hear the cocking or the raking of a gun at any point?
Hey, angikhumbuli.
No, I don't recall.
Now, after how long, after Longwe had escaped from the house, according to your evidence, does the first shot get fired?
Ngokwazi wami angikaze ngibheke isikhathi. And makunesehlakalo esinje, isikhathi is the last thing on your mind.
As far as I know, I never looked at the time, and when such an incident occurs or takes place, time is the last thing on your mind.
In fact, I jumped the gun. Let me start here. Your evidence is that after Longwe had escaped from the house, all of you stand up from your relative position from the couches and you all approached the first suspect, push him towards the kitchen, correct?
Sabadudula bobabili asithathanga oyedwa noma umude noma umfishane, sabadudula bonke bobabili sanamba ekitchen.
We pushed both of them. We didn't take the short one or the tall one. We pushed both of them to the kitchen.
And when you say all of you stood up, is there a specific person who stood up first or initiated this approach of the first suspect and the pushing that happened thereafter?
Angikhumbuli ukuthi ubani wasukuma kuqala kodwa ngiyazi ukuthi sasukuma.
No, I can't remember or recall as to who stood up first, but I remember that we stood up.
Now, at the time of the incident, how old was Christian, the boy?
Mangaphazami uChristian uvele ngo-2010 mhlawumbe la ko-3-4.
If I'm not mistaken, Christian was born in 2010, so he was between 3 and 4.
Now, as you are pushing both suspects, none of you from the house are screaming to alert the neighbors that there's something wrong in your house.
Umsindo wawukhona
There was a noise,
kodwa engakwazi ukuthi umakhelwane bezwa na ngoba wethu umnyango wawuvaliwe.
but what I don't know is whether the neighbors heard because our door was closed.
Let me break it down because you say, I'm asking about screaming, you're talking about Umsindo. Did you personally scream to alert somebody out there that there's a problem in your house?
Angikukhumbuli.
No, I don't remember that.
And by the way, from the witness statements of the Ngwashes, your neighbors at 13510 Kutano Street, Mr. Ngwache Senior, the ex-police officer, Bulelani, they say in Zamo section, your section, there's a whistleblowing system in terms of which each house has a whistle, like your soccer whistle, and each time there's a crime or something wrong within that community in Zamo section, a whistle is blown to alert the neighbors and the community generally that there's something wrong in a particular household where that whistle emanates from. You know about that?
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Ramosepele, just to be short and then
Okay.
Okay, but I've got it, it's fine.
Leo lanto zengiyayazi ngake ngezwela ngayo kodwa ekhaya sasingenayo impembe.
That I know. I once heard about it, but at home we didn't have that whistle, or we didn't have the whistle.
I'll take your answer and just to complete this point. And in fact, on that day, most of the people that converged at the house came because Mr. Ngashe himself was on the street blowing that whistle.
Engakusho ukuthi mina ngaze ngafika kwamaphiri akaze ngizwe impempe.
What I can say is that I went as far as Mapiri's house, or I reached Mapiri's house, and I never heard a whistle.
Ngabuya ngaze ngaya esibhedlela angizange ngizwe lo mpempe.
I went to hospital, I never heard that whistle.
Ukuthi wayeme ngaphi ke sengasichazela naye.
As to where he was standing, he can tell.
That will be the loudest whistle to be heard from your house to the hospital. That will be the biggest whistle in the world.
Please, I don't think we listening to us on
Sorry, did Mr. Ngashe make a statement?
He did, my lord.
Is that what he says in his statement?
That's correct, Mr. Man.
Okay.
Please, my lord, we just want to place on record.
Yeah.
We came to hear last week that Mr. Ngashe Senior has unfortunately passed on.
Oh, the same gentleman.
I'm here to inform my
Yeah,
colleague.
that's the senior, my lord. So.
Yeah.
Now, by your own admission, your kitchen area is a very tiny space, correct?
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, if I may request that photo 15 of exhibit D be shown to you, please. Now, when this fighting with the two suspects, as you testified to yesterday, occurs, where were you relative to this picture?
Lesi sithombe oqala siveza ikitchen ngokuphelela kwaso.
This picture actually doesn't depict the kitchen as a whole.
I'm looking for them to perhaps get a better picture for us that shows from the beginning of the kitchen door on the passage side. Whilst he's doing that, your testimony is that during this fight, you saw one of Tumelo Madala's crutch, and then you went next to the heater. We saw where the heater was. That's why I want to find out, before I even ask that question, where you were relative to this picture. Okay. Perhaps I'll come to it after the tea break, if we've got tea in Pretoria today. But be that as it may, I'll come to this point. Let me just put an asterisk next to it, and we'll see what to take it.
Which point is it? Where Tumelo's crutch was
It's in the
found?
It's on the other side where there's a heater man. So I want to find out from here, when she says she saw it, and then she went to take it to come and perhaps use it in the fight. That's what I want to find out about.
No, that's the evidence. He says, sorry, you are recalling well saying you did pick up the crutch.
Yakhumbula ngithuthi
That's the
waphosha
evidence.
icrash.
Yebo my lord.
Yes.
I leave it. I'll come to it. Now, let's move on. Your evidence is that you picked up this crutch and then you wanted to hit a suspect. Which suspect was that, by the way?
Suspect number 2.
Suspect number 2.
And in your attempt to hit him, suspect number 2, you then realized that you couldn't reach. And that's when Tumelo Madala takes the crutch from you and hits the second suspect, correct?
Kunjani?
That's correct.
What was the reason for you not to be able to reach that suspect to hit him with that crutch?
Okokuqala ngimfishane.
Firstly, I'm short.
Okwesibili ngikhumbula kahle ukuthi khona babe phambi kwami ukuthi nje angisekho sure ukuthi kwakubani exactly.
And secondly, there were those that were in front of me, but I can't remember well as to who those were.
I'll revert to that evidence after tea, because that's exactly the point where I want to head in. The tiny confines of that kitchen and the number of people that were involved in that fight in that tiny space. I'm not sure today we are having a comfort or a tea break at this point.
Are you tired of cross-examining?
At this point, my lord, I am.
Yeah.
Just for 15 minutes.
Okay.
I'm not sure everybody agrees on my left, my lord, 15
I'm the
minutes.
first one to agree.
Okay. Mr. Malloy?
Now, Ms. Khumalo, we were at the point where you had first a clutch belonging to Tumelo Madala from next to the heater. You tried to hit him, you couldn't reach. Then Tumelo Madala himself takes the crutch and hit the second suspect. Are we still together?
I follow you.
Where exactly did Tumelo Madala hit the second suspect with that crutch?
I didn't notice as to where he hit him, but I know that he hit him.
Now, let's go to this aspect of the relative positions of the main actors in that fight, in that confines of that space in the kitchen. And I'm going to ask again that photo 15 be exhibited to us, please. Now, next to, there's a writing, it's circled, I don't know what, my vision can't see clearly. That's a 2, is that a 2? And it's circled. Next to or in that vicinity, which suspect was standing in that vicinity and the direction or position he was facing?
Suspect number 1.
The one who was standing there is the one with the dreadlocks, suspect number 1.
I get to Shola.
Are you
Yes,
referring to them?
indeed. Now, relative to him, where was the deceased that you refer to as Senzo Meyiwa? I refer to the deceased for my purposes. Where was he?
They were facing each other like this.
And then they were facing each other. Were they in a lockup? Because if I understood your testimony is that they were wrestling for a firearm. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, in that position, facing each other, they are jostling for the firearm, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, next to him, let's use the door handle as a beacon, but I'm not saying it was exactly there. Who was standing there?
Suspect number 2,
Suspect number 2 was standing right there.
And relative to him and the direction that person was facing, who was in that position in front of the second suspect?
Njengoba sengishilo ukuthi bekubhizi kitchen angisakhumbuli kahle ngoba abanye babesuka ngapha beyingapha abanye basuke ngala bayekala so angisakhumbuli kahle ukuthi ubani wayelapha.
As I've already said that it was busy in the kitchen, the others would move from this side to this side and the others from this side to that side. So I can't remember well as to who was there.
Now, my point exactly, and I'll come back to in greater detail when we talk about the ID kits, that was compiled by Mrs. Steenkamp, I think you should recall her, and the ID parade. Now, you say you were busy, and I accept it was busy, it was hectic in that situation. For how long did you observe the facial characteristics of both accused and in particular, both suspects, and in particular, the second suspect? How long did you take in that busyness to observe the facial features of the second suspect?
Firstly, the kitchen light is very bright. You can even see a fly passing.
Ndena ususpect number 2 ngambona kahle futhi ngalesi sikhathi mangiqala ngithatha icrash ngimbheka ngambona okokuqala mayise passaging ngase ngizomshaya ngecrash ngangizama ukumshaya ebusweni.
And I saw suspect number 2 and I looked at him. I first saw him in the passage, and when I took the crutch, I wanted to hit him in the face.
Now, and bear with me, your best educated guess in terms of time, was it a minute, was it seconds, when you looked into his face as you state.
Ngambona kahle. Into engayibhekanga nje ukuthi isikhathi mhlambe ngabuka 10 minutes futhi cha. Angibhekanga konke lokho kodwa ukumbona yena ngambona kahle.
I looked at him well and I saw him well and I can still recall or remember him, but the only thing that I didn't look at was the time as to how long I looked at him.
Like I said, I'll come to that in greater detail when we do identification in terms of this ID kit and the ID parade. But in fact, let me leave it for that because I'll touch for it in greater detail. Now, for completeness sake, in that hectic situation where there's a firearm, there's danger, the following persons: Mtokozi Sitwala, Tumelo Madala, Khumalo, the deceased, I know, leave the deceased, and Kelly. Kelly, your mother, Tumelo Madala, and Mtokozi Sitwala. What role did they play in the fight that was happening in the kitchen?
Wonke umuntu owayelaphana wayezama ukushaya ngandlela thize ayaziyo kodwa mina ngesingami mina ngifinyelelanga.
Each and every person that was there was trying in whichever way that the person possible to that person to assault, but I myself I couldn't, or I didn't succeed.
And in that confined space, and if we look, sink to the cupboard where there's a yellowish bucket, I'm not sure what that side is, or is it 2 sinks, I'm not sure. You are saying that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is the 6 of you that were in the house, the adults, including yourself and the deceased and the other 4 that I counted, and the 2 suspects at the door, managed to cramp in and fit in that space for that fight.
Mengikhuluma ngabantu laba engibaziyo mina akekho wayesidudla. So sonke salingana lapha.
If I'm making reference or speaking about the people, those that I know, no one is hugely built or is fat, so all of us fitted in there.
Now, your testimony is that at some stage during this fight that's happening in the kitchen, a gunshot goes off, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When this gunshot goes off, what was the relative position of the deceased and the person with the dreadlocks? What was their relative position at that time, not during the fight now? At the time the gunshot goes off.
Njengoba bese ngishilo phambilini ukuthi babelela isibhamu bobabili bereslela isibhamu ngaleso sikhathi. Nangaleso sikhathi nje ubumbuza babelokhu belwela isibhamu beqhubeke njalo.
As I've already mentioned that they were wrestling for the firearm, both of them, and even at that time when the firearm went off, they were in that process of wrestling for the firearm.
Let me clarify it for you. My aim is not to confuse you. Let's start where we started. Where the Mark II is at with the circle, we agreed that was the gentleman with the dreadlocks, correct?
Yes.
And in front of him, and involved in a tussle as well for the firearm, is the deceased, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now my question simply is this. When the firearm, the gunshot goes off, are they still in that position that you described it?
As far as I can recall, yes.
And at the time this gunshot goes off, did you see the firearm at that stage?
Eqinisweni amehla ilokho egijima yonke indawo. So angeke ngisho ukuthi ngasibona mesiqhuma, cha ngezwa ngenhlansi engishaya phansi ngasizwa sona.
Being honest, the eyes were all running all over the place. I wouldn't say that at that time I saw the firearm, but I just heard it when it went off and the spark that hit me.
Now I want you to clarify for me, because there's an aspect yesterday of your testimony that I did not quite get correctly. You'll tell me if I'm wrong. Let me just put it according to how I put it in my notes. You said that you saw a spark when the gunshot went off, and then you then were hit by a shrapnel, correct? Or a piece of something. I'm not sure. I can't put a name on it.
Awuzwanga kahle advocate. Ngithe mina isibhamu saqhuma ngezwe into eshaya phansi and then ngezwa inhlansi eyangishaya unyaweni.
No, you didn't hear me correctly, advocate. I said that the firearm went off. I then heard something that hit the floor, and then I felt a spark that hit my foot.
Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to come to, because unfortunately my first name is Sipho, but I'm not Zulu, so I don't understand the language. So the point that I'm trying to get is this: the spark that you saw was not from the fire, the gun as it fired. That's what I want to get. Was not from the firearm as it was shot. Remember, when let me clarify perhaps.
Yeah.
When a firearm is shot, normally, especially at night, you'll see what they call a muzzle flash. That is the burnt particles that come at the barrel of the firearm. So that's what I wanted to hear. Is that the spark that she saw, or a spark when the bullet hits the floor?
Bengishilo phambilini ngathi asikho ispark engisibonile. Ngizwe kushaya phansi, into eshaya phansi ngase ngizwa ispark esingishaya onyaweni. Akukho ngibonile.
As I said previously, I never said that, or there is no spark that I saw. The firearm went off, and then I heard something that hit the floor, and then the spark that hit my foot.
I'm not going to belabor that point, because I was confused by this word in class, because in Setswana we say kasi. The kasi is a spark, so that's what confused me, but let's leave it at that. Now, your testimony is that upon this gunshot going off, yourself and Tumelo Madala ran off, yourself in the bathroom and Tumelo Madala in some bedroom respectively, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And just in I'm not taking it step by step as you took it, but further that whilst you were in the bathroom, you had a second and a third gunshot going off, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, if I understood your testimony correctly, is that the second shot, if the first shot and the second shot were of the same loudness, and the third one was not as loud as the first two, correct?
That's correct.
Now, and then just for clarification purposes and completeness, saying those second and third gunshots, according to your testimony, you testified that they were both emanating from the vicinity of the kitchen area, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, also now clarify this for me. It's a point, but it's a quick point to pass on. In the bathroom, between the bathtub and the basin, I just wanted to find out the position that we were at, because yesterday I was conflicted between the two because I couldn't hear you clearly. Were you squatting or kneeling in that position?
I did both.
Okay, let me track back. I'll keep on doing that, so indulge me. How long, let's go back to the kitchen. I'm going back to the kitchen now. How long did the fight in the kitchen take place from the time when the two suspects are bundled together, they end up where they ended up, the fight ensues, and the first shot, the first gunshot goes off? What was the time duration?
Njengoba sengishilo phambilini ukuthi isikhathi into yokugcina uyibhekayo.
As I've already said previously, that time is the last thing that you look at.
Especially futhi makwenzeka into enjena, kwesinye isikhathi ufile ngathi kuthatha isikhathi eside ngoba kuningi okwenzakalayo, kwesinye isikhathi ufile ngathi kusheshile, so angizange sibheke isikhathi okwangempela.
And especially when something of this nature happens, at times it feels like it takes a long time, at times it feels like it's quick. So I didn't look at the time.
I understand that, and it's a normal reaction. But what I'm trying to say now, borrowing from your word, the feeling that you had, was it did it feel like it took longer or it took shorter?
Lo mbuzo unzima kakhulu ngoba kuyashintshashintshana. Sometimes njengoba bese ngishilo ukuthi ufila ngathi kusheshile, kwesinye isikhathi ufila ngathi kuthatha isikhathi eside, especially makuyinda into ebuhlungu kanjeyana.
That question is a difficult one because, as I've already said, that it interchanges. At times it feels like it took long. At times it feels like it was very quick, especially in such a hurtful situation.
Now, let me jump back now. You are squatting or kneeling in the bathroom. Now, I see a bluish object, and obviously from there, I won't see the basin. But just for clarification purposes for me, because I couldn't understand yesterday because you were emotional at times, where were you kneeling or squatting in relation to that picture that's on the screen now?
Asiqale la le basin.
Let's start here. Sorry, let's start here. That's the basin where the witness is pointed. That's the basin.
And then la kunesikhala esincane okwazi ukuba khona mhlawumbe uma ugeza amazinyo noma ugeza izandla.
And there's a little space there where you are able to stand when you are brushing your teeth or you are washing your hands.
So ngangime khona kuleso sikhala lesi esijwayele ukusebenzisa uma sigeza izandla noma sigeza amazinyo.
So I was standing in that gap that we usually make use of when we're brushing our teeth or washing our hands.
Let's look at photo 22 as well. If I look at, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the space that you refer to where you normally would wash your teeth or hands or whatever on the basin seems to be facing the door that is on your right as I stand here, correct?
No, that's not true. The basin is not facing the door. If you open the door as the witness is indicating, the basin is facing that side.
And perhaps let's go back to 21 again, photo 21. Now, that door, to which direction does it close? The bathroom door?
When you open to the inside.
Yeah.
Okay, you close, it comes to me.
To you, yes.
Now, I'm going to, with regard to that, you are in the bathroom, the gunshots have occurred, it has quietened down, and your testimony now is that you then peep through the bathroom door to ascertain what is still going on where the gunshots were coming from, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, your testimony is that as you peep through, you see the deceased going towards the dining room. Is that how you put it? Because I couldn't hear some of your testimony yesterday.
Yes, that's correct.
And according to your testimony, if I understood it well as well, is that as he's going towards the dining room, he's coming from the kitchen area, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Then your testimony further is that shortly then you see Kelly following the deceased, correct?
Yes.
Then shortly thereafter your mom also following them, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then also you then see the first suspect, the one with the dreadlocks, also following towards the direction where the three of them had gone, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that Zandile Khumalo stood behind the deceased and your mom was next to them at the couch in the vicinity of the corner of the couch and the TV stand, correct?
Yebo kunjani?
Yes, that's correct.
And finally, you say your testimony is that Kelly's cellular phone, the S4, was at the time charging and it was on the TV stand. If I understood you well, is that correct?
Bengithe izolo mengikhuluma ukuthi angisakhumbuli noma ibiphezu kwesofa ku armrest noma ibisestandini ngoba indawo esiyisebenzisayo lezo nesicharge.
If I remember well, what I said yesterday was I can't remember whether it was on the couch, on the armrest, or on the stand, because those were the two places that we were using when charging.
Be that as it may, you testify that your mother then takes that phone off the charger, Kelly's phone, correct?
Ngambona seyiphethe yebo ukuthi uyithathe phezu kwe-armrest noma phezu kwe-stand angimbonanga ngoba wayibhekile.
When I saw her, she had it. As to whether she took it from the stand or the armrest, I didn't see that because she was facing that way.
And if I understood you well, you say when your mother takes that phone, it somehow fell on the sofa or on the couch. Is that my understanding of that aspect of your testimony?
Engikushilo ukuthi yathathwa ezandleni zakhe. Ususpect number 1 mayimshaya and then wayithatha ifoni umama iyeke bambisiswa.
What I said was it was taken from her hand, when suspect number 1 hit her, witness indicating with the elbow, hit her, then he took her from her hand.
And that's the question that I was going next to, that you say you saw the first suspect with dreadlocks hitting your mom with an elbow and taking that phone, correct?
Yebo ngiyambona.
Yes, I saw it.
I'll come to this aspect when I deal with your previous and inconsistent statements. Now, I'm going to jump the issue of going to the hospital and all of that. Now, as now it's cutting down, the suspects are all gone. You go to seek for help.
Yebo njani?
Yes, that's correct.
You go and seek for help because you say you tried to call 10111, but you couldn't for some reason. What was the reason thereof?
Njengoba sengishilo ukuthi ingqondo yafreeza, hayi ukuthi 10111 angikwazi, ngiyawazi. Kodwa ngaleso sikhathi ngoba kuningi okwakwenzeka, ngavele ngafreeza ngangazi noma ngidayile noma ngenza njani.
As I've already said that my mind just froze. Not that I don't know 10111, I do know 10111, but at that time I didn't know whether to dial or not.
But you are with Kelly and your mother in that sitting room. Why don't you give the phone to one of them to call for assistance?
Nabo babekhala ngabona ukuthi nabo kusho ukuthi bakule position efana neyami, so ngafuna umuntu osober minded.
They were also crying. I then realized that they were in the same position that I was in, so I looked for someone who was sober-minded.
Now, your evidence is that you go over to Mapiri's house, but before you get there, there's a car parked on the street belonging to Tabiseng, whom you described as a relative of Mapiri, correct?
Yebo njani?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, at that time, in your frantic state, why did you not ask Tabiseng, because she is known to you, and screamed that there has been an issue or a problem in the house, that she must immediately summon help?
Umthabisenge asinalo ukujwayelana ngalo ndlela kodwa uMaphiri umngani kama.
We're not that used to each other or close with Ntabiseng, but Mapiri is my mother's friend.
And ujwayele ukuza ekhaya ngaso sonke isikhathi.
And she is used to coming to our house all the time.
Ingqondo yangisa kuyena.
So my mind took me to her.
Accept that. My Lord, with leave of the court, I'm going to ask for 10 minutes because I'm changing exhibits and my bigger document is on the other side, my Lord. And I need to sort out exhibits that I'm going to ask questions.
And 10 minutes for that.
Yes, my Lord.
Mr. Blowy, where are the exhibits?
It's
I think they are on just on the other
crate.
side.
They're where?
They're in a crate, my
Just
Lord.
on the other
It's
side.
extra files on the crate on the other
They're on
side.
the floor.
Yes.
No, you can go and take them.
My lord, I have to peruse one by one.
Let us you're going to take them at Victoria Square.
Then, my lord, I'm going to ask, because I was wondering this morning whether to lay them down here so that it's easier for me to do there's members of the place, my lord. So, hence I requested 10 minutes. Just now.
You want to take them all out, or you take them one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. Or you're laying them all. There were 12 exhibits, as I remember reading. Mr. Balui, how many exhibits were there? 12 was.
In the previous talk?
Yeah.
No, there were not. There were not.
So you want to take them one by one, or you want them all to be strewn up around them?
My lord, for the sake of brevity, so that each time I don't beg for an indulgence to go again.
So you need 10 minutes. Okay,
Yes.
fine. Come back in 10 minutes.
My lord, I'm indebted to the court.
Thank you.
Now, ma'am, if I ask you of a person named Tamsanga Gabuza, do you know that who that person is?
Ngimazi umngani kaSenzo.
I know him as Senzo's friend.
Have you met Tamsanga Gabuza before?
Yebo, uSenzo benokummema mhlambe makunento encane esizenzayo endlini.
Yes, Senzo used to invite him when we had some little ceremonies or things that we would have at home.
So in terms of familiarity, would I be correct to say he was just an acquaintance to you?
Engimazi ngokumbona yebo.
That is correct, yes.
Now, this gentleman, Mr. Gabuza, has made a statement in this matter, and I just want to read to you only one paragraph from that statement, and I just need your comment on it, correct?
Where did he make that statement, sir?
So, Mama,
Where did he make that statement? Who attested the statement? Have you laid the basis for introducing that statement?
my lord,
Yeah,
it's a statement that's been discovered by us.
Yeah, no. Me, I don't know any statement.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking you this
Oh,
question.
indeed, sorry, my lord, it's me who didn't clarify it. It's
Yeah.
a state witness that was disclosed to us.
That's it, fine. Okay.
And also is in the list, my lord, of witness, list of
Okay,
witness
fine.
statements. May I proceed, my lord, then
Yes,
to
yes,
read
yes.
the said paragraph? It's paragraph 5 thereof, my lord, and it states, I can also state that at certain times, Senzo told me before he died that
As a court, please, my lord, we want to object to that to this question. It's based on hearsay, and the question will be unfair. We strongly object to that.
Mr. Balui says you want to introduce hearsay evidence.
exception to hearsay, my lord,
Hello?
exception to hearsay.
Yeah, there is an exception. Section 3 of
Yes.
45 of 1988. I know all that.
Yes.
But he is saying you can't introduce that evidence because that statement says, Senzo told me that. Is that what you're saying?
Indeed, my lord.
That's it. Evidence Act number 45 of 1988. How do you introduce hearsay evidence?
So, my lord,
Yep.
my lord, will mull over it. Let me not be fair to the witness at this point in time.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Khumalo, you testified that you attended a session whereby you met with the sketch artist to compile the ID kit for the persons that you saw at the incident on the 26th of October 2014, correct?
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
And if you recall, relative to the incident happening in October 2014, when did you meet with Mrs. Warrant Officer Steenkamp?
Sathi mase siqeda ukubhala i-statement ngelanga lesibili emva kwesehlakalo, and then sasuka kuleli room le-statement sasesiswa kuleli room lokuthi sikwazi ukusiza ukudweba.
It was on the day of the making of the statements, when we were done with the making or the giving of the statements. We were then taken to this other room to go and assist with the a drawing of the identikit.
Now, with respect to meeting up with Mrs. Warrant Officer Steenkamp, the purpose thereof essentially was to compile ID kits for the persons that you say in your evidence were suspects number 1 and 2, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And with respect to accused number 1, suspect number 1, you've already stated the things that you added on that ID kit because other people had already done some features on the case, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, with respect to suspect number 1, I'm not going to ask you questions because it's not my client, but regarding the second suspect, and I'm going to read my note, this is the statement of a warrant officer, Amanda Steenkamp of LCRC, Proteat Lane, Medan Robbery. Now, I'm going to read only the aspect that touches on you regarding the second suspect. And she says, and I read, the second witness was Kelly's sister, Zandile Khumalo. That is yourself, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then she further states, she told a similar version and gave a similar profile and facial description of suspect A. That is the first suspect that I said I'm not going to touch on.
Do you have an extra one? Okay, I'm there.
The first paragraph is where she introduces herself, and there's the main paragraph, the third paragraph, the smaller paragraph where it starts with the second witness is, you see that, Mr. Jonas? On page 4.
Just a second, sorry. Apologies, ma'am. Yes, I can see that, sir.
Okay, let's start again. Warrant Officer Steenkamp reads this regarding the second suspect, and she says, the second witness was Kelly's sister, Zandile Khumalo. She told a similar version and gave a similar profile and facial description of suspect A. The only feature she adds was the eyebrows. She saw the eyebrows when suspect A lost his headgear during the scuffling with the deceased. And then the important part is that she says she could not describe the second suspect. What is your comment on that? Because the police specialist says whatever you testified in court about, the features that you testified about here in court, she says you didn't describe what you say is the second suspect at the scene, whom you now dog identified as accused number 2.
Engifuna ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi ngaleso sikhathi sasi under a lot of shock. Ezinye izinto zibuya emva kwesikhathi. Ingqondo iyabuya ukhumbule kancane kancane izinto zihlangana.
What I would like you to know is that during that time, we were under a shock, or too much shock, and that after some time, you would then regain, in other words, you would then recall, things come back bit by bit, and you are able to recall.
Futhi njengoba sengingene la ecourt ngithema ngiphosa amehlo lapha. Umzimba wami nespirit sami konke ingqondo kwabuya kwahlala lapha.
And when I came into court, everything, my mind, my body, my spirit, just came back, and I saw him.
I hear what you say, but you didn't answer my question. My question is simply this: do you admit or not that you did not tell Warrant Officer Steenkamp the features that you now testified about in this court as those mentioning the second intruder that you don't identify as the second accused?
Engicela futhi ukwazi ukuthi ngathi mangena mina laphana ezinye izinto zaseyifakiwe already, abanye bese bebefike khona laphana. Mina ngase ngifika ngifaka lokho okunye nokunye engibona ukuthi ikona engikukhumbulayo.
The other thing that I would like you to know is that when I went into that room, the others had already given the features, so I just added that which I saw that was still outstanding.
Okwesibili futhi ukuthi bangibonisa sona isithombe sasaye umsolo lo. Ngasibona futhi ngakholwa ukuthi ngempela uye.
And the other thing is that they showed me a picture or a photo of the suspect, and I was satisfied and I could see that it was him.
ingakho futhi ngingakudanga okunye elokho bese ngikusho.
And which is why I did not add the other.
Ma'am, yes or no? Let's cut this chase. Yes or no? You did not give warrant officer Steenkamp those features that you testified about in court, correct?
Bese kukhona ingakho ngingazange ngisachaza.
It was already there, which is why I did not mention it or say it.
I'll take that as a no.
Kubuwena nalapho.
That's up to you.
Now, what you added with Ms. Steenkamp with respect to the second suspect was you put a mustache that you described that it runs across the mouth, both four corners of the mouth, right? And also you added only height and complexion, correct?
Yebo kunjalo.
Yes, that's correct.
And I can go to that. I didn't want to do that exercise, but I can go to that. In all the statements, if I remind you, and we can go back to that, you've never ever to the police from the 27th of October 2017 until the 18th when you made your last statement, you made 3 statements to the police. You've never ever given them the facial features of the person that you say was the second suspect.
Features, the features?
The facial features.
Okokuqala istatement njengoba bese ngishilo istatement sokuqala esasenza yebo umuntu wayengaphansi kokuthuka nakho konke lokho, but esesibili i-additional statement kwakuyimbuzo uphendula umbuzo, so if lo mbuzo awufikanga kumina bengeza ukuphendula.
Firstly,
ngawutholanga lapho.
the first statement was when one was still shocked or under shock, and the second statement or the additional statement, then it was a question would be posed, and then I would then answer. If that question then never reached me, or that question was never posed to me, then I would not get to that.
I get that, but on the 27th of October 2014, when you made that statement, the police were empathizing with you and the people that were in the house. That means they were not harsh on you, correct?
Okay, 27 niggas, the October 20.
So I don't know what the basis is for,
Let's
for
do
the
it.
question.
I'll withdraw the question, madam. Then let's go to the other aspect, which is the ID parade that you identified, that you attended, I'm sorry, at GP SAPS regarding the first suspect that was arrested in this matter. And before I even go there, let me ask you this question. The person that you allege to be the second suspect, you've never seen that person before prior to 26 October 2014, correct?
Yebo kunjalo.
That's correct.
Now, regarding, and my learned colleagues from my left will agree, and excuse me for asking this question. You've never ever attended an ID parade pertaining to accused number 1 to 5, correct?
Yebo kunjalo.
That's correct, yes.
And now let me quickly move to the ID parade in GP, SAPS in Joburg. That lineup had, you said yesterday, I don't want to put words into your mouth, it had many male persons on the lineup, correct?
Yebo kunjalo.
That's correct, yes.
And having done that process, entered the room where the persons are lined up, you see them through a two-way mirror. You then asked, because you suspected a particular person, you then asked for that person to be brought forward closer to the mirror so that you can look at them properly, correct?
Yebo kunjalo.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, yesterday, your testimony was that at that identity parade, you did not identify anyone, correct?
Cha, akekho impela engamkhona.
No, indeed, there's no one that I identified.
My Lord, I've got in front of me an SAP 329, which is an identity.
What?
SAP.
Yeah, it's a parade document.
Yes.
I know all these things.
Okay. Yes.
You know all about it?
Yeah, I was just, in case my Lord will ask me where am I taking this from.
Yeah.
It serves as an exhibit, my lord.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Okay. Now, the person that conducted the ID parade says, and and I'm going to quote in the results section of that document. It says, and in quotations, number 2, come to the front, closed quotations. That's what you asked for, correct? And then from
Yes.
there, it says, you identified / said who was wearing a brown jacket, t-shirt, and a black jean.
On page?
Sorry, Mr. On page 3. So, Mr. Jonas. Where does a witness? No, not page 3. Sorry, Mr. Jonas. On page 4. Where it says witness Zandile Khumalo, language Zulu,
Yes,
and all
yes,
of that.
yes.
So I was reading at the 8th slag or the results section.
Just read me, just read this one.
If I may read again at the results section, it starts with open quotations and it says, number 2, come to the front, close quotations, and I asked the witness whether that was her request according to what's written there.
Yebo njalo.
Yes, that's correct.
And then now, as part of that results section, it says, you identified / said who was wearing a brown jacket, a t-shirt, and a black jean. That's what it says. So you identified somebody contrary to what you told the court yesterday.
So let's see someone's name. Sledge.
Yes, let's
Okay.
say.
Please, I don't think it's correct. The witness did say she identified someone and said that person, who she identified as the as number 2, or was wearing the tag with number 2, had similar features as the second suspect.
Okay, I'll then leave it, my lord. Now, let's.
Assisting with that.
I'm not, my
You're
lord.
not, okay.
Yes, I'm withdrawing that question, my lord.
But is that what the policeman wrote?
Yes.
How he was about police service.
Sorry, my lord.
And he was about police service.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Now, we were at this juncture, me and you, of the dog identification of accused number 2, right? And my question was that prior to the 26th of October, you've never met him, we were past that stage, correct?
Yebo njalo.
That's correct, yes.
And we've also agreed that okay, let's leave that. Now, accused number 3 was arrested on the 16th of June 2020 on this matter.
Number 3.
Accused number 2 was arrested on the 16th of June 2020 on this matter.
16
Did-
June 2020.
And he appeared in court on the 27th of October 2020.
Yes.
Did the police call you to come to an ID parade arranged for the purposes of identifying him?
No.
And for completeness sake, do you know whether or not the ID parade regarding specifically accused number 2, whether the ID parade was held?
How would the witness know?
Let's
He
leave it.
says he never attended any parade after that.
I'll withdraw that, my lord. Now, the person that you identified as the second suspect, did that person have any special features or characteristics that were impressed on you at the scene on the 26th of October 2014?
Angikho sure ukuthi ngiyawu-understand umbuzo ngicela ukuphinde.
I'm
Did
not
he have-
sure. I think
For example, there'll be people with, like you described, the first suspect, big eyes, protruding eyes, your contours, whatever. Now, this second suspect, did he have any other features facially that were distinctive, that the last they'll be impressed in your memory?
Ngikhumbula ubuso bonke njengoba bunjalo.
I remember the.
Ngikhumbule
Sorry.
i-height yakhe, ngikhumbule nomzimba wakhe.
I remember the whole face as is, his height as well as his body.
Now, well, accused number 2 and the rest of his co-accused, they are arrested, but let me be specific about accused number 2. Like I say, he's arrested 16 June 2020. Did the cops, sorry to use colloquial in court, did the police come and tell you that we've arrested new suspects on that matter?
Cha, abezanga kumina into njengayizwe endabeni.
No, they didn't come to me, but it's something that I overheard over the news.
When did you overhear that on the news? The same month they were arrested on in October, I mean, they appeared in court. Let me phrase it this way. When did you learn about their arrest? At the time of their arrest, or when they appeared for the first time in court in Boksburg?
Angisakhumbuli kahle kodwa khona ngiyakhumbula ukuthi ngezwa angitshelwanga muntu.
I can't remember well, but what I do recall is that I heard. No one informed me.
And now they appear for the first time in Boksburg and subsequent occasions. And I know that you follow this case religiously. When their photos were now widespread in newspapers, media, and general social media, when did you see their faces for the first time?
Okokuqala i-TV ngiyayi-avoid, especially indaba ngoba leli cala into engizamayo ukuthi ngikhohlwe ngayo kodwa noma isimo singiphoqa ukuthi ngikhumbule.
Firstly, I avoid the television or the TV, especially the news, because of this matter. And but although the situation necessitates me not to avoid it or to remember it, but I'm trying not to.
So ukumbona kwami okokuqala ngambona, I think mangikhumbula kahle kwakutestify uMthobo.
When I saw him for the first time, if I remember well, I think it was when Mtoko was testifying.
And I don't know when Togo testified because I wasn't part of this trial when it started. When you saw him then, did you then go to the police and say, the person that is now accused number 2 in that matter is the person that I believe or think was the second suspect on the 26th of October 2014 at the incident at our house?
Into engiyaziyo ukuthi noma futhi ngangiyazi ngaleso sikhathi ukuthi liyofika usuku la ngizokwazi ukusho khona. So whether ngisho manje noma ngisho then kodwa kusalayo ngizosho.
What I know and what I knew at the time was that the day will come where I will get an opportunity to say that whether I'm going to say it here but I will eventually say it.
Now, I'm not sure in total how many years have elapsed since October 26, 2014 to date. But in my estimation, it's nearing 9 years or just over 9 years. Will you correct me if I'm wrong?
That's true. It's close to 9 years.
And in that period, you'll agree with me that from 2014 October to now, the memory of the incident when it happened then and when you see him now, your memory has faded. Will you agree with me?
Ngiqale ngokuthi into embi yenzeke empilweni yakho, especially mina into efana nale yayiqala, and engqondweni yami ayindawo. And ngiyakholwa ukuthi iminyakeni ezayo 20 esazolandela ngisazokhumbula.
Let me start by saying that something that happens, something bad that happens, and to me especially, it happened for the first time. So in my memory or in my mind, it won't go anywhere. And I also believe that in the next coming 20 years, that I will still be able to recall it.
Now, finally, with respect to the versions of accused number 1 and 2, and their instructions to me are as follows. My Lord, before I go there, I see accused number 1 is raising his hand. May I approach?
Yeah, I can approach.
My Lord, my colleague here says it's China time for lunch at the moment.
What's the time now?
It's exactly 1 minute.
Ali?
It's 1 o'clock, my Lord.
Mr. Valoy, should we have dinner? And when do we come back? 2 o'clock. Okay, we'll adjourn until 2.
I nearly, my Lord, went over myself. there's the last piece of evidence, which is a record of interview conducted and participated into by...
Interview?
Yes.
Yeah.
By the witness, my lord.
Yeah.
And we've asked the state to assist us with that being shown here, my lord.
Was that discovered, the interview?
Yes.
Indeed, it was also transcribed.
Okay.
And given to...
Okay, fine, yes. Let's listen to the interview.
They're wearing masks half of the time. So there's no way I can say Ilo or Ilo. And none of those guys, I can't wait for the day in court because as far as we are here, it is but usenzo it was not just the Khumalos in the house. Yes, we've seen Togo every now and then, but when we had seen or we had met for the first time that day, because why is there in Daba, you proper Amalobolo, he was going to be in Komi, Senzo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my lord. Yeah, thank you. We are indebted, my lord. Now, Ms. Khumalo, I'm not going to ask you a lot emanating from that video, except to go to the part where you say they were wearing masks and I could not identify them, only that aspect. When you say they were wearing masks, who are you referring to?
Accused.
When I said so, I was referring to the accused.
And by the accused, are you referring to which accused in specifically?
Ukhumbule advocate ngaleso sikhathi kwakuyisikhathi secorona. So wonke umuntu wayengena evalubuso.
You remember, advocate, that at the time it was during the time of the corona pandemic, so everyone that would come in or was coming in would come in with his or her face covered.
Do you mean when they are there, sorry to say, I'll only refer to accused number 1 and 2, when they appeared in court on this matter?
That's what I'm referring to, yes.
Okay. As the court pleases, my lord, that is all from my side.
Okay, thank you. You haven't put your version of the defense.
Now, ma'am, I represent 1 and 2, like I said. Their versions with regard to how they were arrested and how they ended up here is the following. Accused number 1 will testify that at the time of his arrest, he was staying in Tembisa with his uncle, and that on the 30th of May 2020, he had gone out to buy airtime at the shops, and that on the way he encountered 2 of his friends that he only know by nicknames as Boy and Brother. By then he had already bought airtime, and Boy and Brother were heading to someone called Sipo's house. He then joined the 2, as he also knew who Sipo was, to go and just chill at Sipo's place. Now, as he is there, he observed a white VW motor vehicle sedan parking at what they call in the township Pakistani shops, tuck shop. Now, if I may approach his evidence, sir.
Yes.
Sorry, my lord, he was just changing the description. He was changing the description of the color. I said the color was white. It was red. Was white. So he says it was red, my lord.
It was red.
Yes.
Okay.
And then that in that car there was a female driver with 2 male persons as passengers. Then he says one of the passengers from that car got out, got into the tuck shop, bought a bottle of water and some bananas, and he returned back to the vehicle, and the vehicle never left the area where it was parked. Now, as they were just chilling with the people that he says he was with, a few moments, a Metropolis officer with a firearm arrived, and he went to the red car, and having talked or whatever was happening in that car, he then saw that Metropolis officer crossing the road, coming towards their direction, pointing the rifle at them. And at some stage during that, whilst they were looking at that officer and the other people that were in the car now coming in tow all the way as well, coming over to where that officer was coming to. The people that were in the car, first is that officer is crossing the road coming to where they are.
Yes.
Now also the people from the car come over.
Okay.
And he says he doesn't know where the other Metropolis officers came, but there's a wall in a house next to brother's house. He saw several other Metropolis officers with rifle walking in a crouching manner, also coming to join this officer towards where they were chatting. And whilst all the officers were there, they were ordered to lie down on their stomachs. They complied, and one of the officers, he doesn't know because they were on their stomachs, he asked them one by one what their names were and where they came from. And upon stating that he's from Matlabatini, Nongoma, KwaZulu-Natal, they pulled him up to his feet and they searched him and confiscated his phones. And thereafter they laid him again on the floor in his tummy. And thereafter they took the three other persons that he was with to their feet, searched them, and then laid them again on the ground. The long and short of it is that he was then taken to that car that was parked opposite, and together with several other police cars, he says it was about a convoy of plus minus 10 to 15 police vehicles from the Ekurhuleni, Metropolis, intelligence, all sorts of units. He was forced to
That's
take...
That's a lot.
Okay, sorry.
10 to 15 police vehicles from Ekurhuleni.
It's Ekurhuleni, Metropolis, the police, intelligence, all sorts of units. But if I may approach again, I mean, that's it, my lord. He was just correcting a small thing, my lord, that all of these police vehicles, amongst them, the only one that was marked was the Ekurhuleni Metropolis car. And from there, he was forced to go to where he resided with his uncle at the rented place in Tembisa. Fortunately, when they got at the yard, they found his uncle and Oli seated near the gate at that residence. His uncle was in the company of a person named Oli, he says he was his uncle's co-worker. Now, they told his uncle that he's been arrested and forced his uncle to go and open the room in which both him and his uncle were staying, and they searched that area. Indeed, a search was conducted and nothing was found at those premises, and then they left with him. But before they left, his uncle asked one of the officers by the name of he asked an officer by the first name of Bongani, doesn't know the surname, that where they were taking accused number one, and Bongani replied by saying, rather the uncle give the police the uncle's contact number, then they let him know later. Now, the long and short of it is that he was taken to some place that looks like a municipality offices in Tembisa, and at that place where all those officers that were present at the first time when he was arrested were also present there, and at that place he was told that he's going to tell the truth that they want to hear from him, and he was with a plastic bag held against his face tightly, the face, the nose, the mouth, the eyes, and laced with pepper spray, tortured for several hours. He says that from the 30th of May 2020 until he was made to sign a confession and do a pointing out. He was tortured from that date until the 6th of June 2020.
Ukusuka ngeyi-30 zikaMeyi 2020.
From the 20th of, I'm sorry, the 30th of May 2020, this process of being tortured, assaulted, tortured was done on him until he confessed. And then on the 6th of June, that's when this torturing stopped.
Sorry, sir, I want to be fair to you.
Yes.
Once you say your client confessed, what do you mean? And I just want you to get what you intend conveying to this court. They tortured him from the 30th of May 2020 until the 6th of June 2020 until he confessed. You can't say that.
My Lord, yes. I must
Because another
paraphrase.
judge will just
Yes, let me
let it
paraphrase.
go.
My Lord. Let me.
Later on, he'll say to you, but you told me your client confessed.
No, let me paraphrase, my Lord. He was forced to sign a statement implicating himself in the commission of this offense. And once he had done that, as an peace atonement, the officers that arrested him then told him that because in the time that he was arrested, he had never seen his family. From the 30th of May until 6th June, nobody from his family knew where he was. Now, having signed the statement implicating himself, on the 6th of June, he was taken to, at first he was approached that what does he want for him to be done for him by the police, and he said that he wished to see his uncle. If I may approach, my Lord. I mean, that he was just confirming because he thought I made a mistake on the date. I was correct with respect to the date of the 6th. That they then took him home to KwaZulu-Natal in 2 police cars to see his family. And when they got home, he was not allowed to leave the car once they were there. But the police officers went inside and introduced themselves and told the parents that they are with him and that he's in the car and that he's being charged for the commission of this offense. Furthermore, that after the police had done so, they sent firstly the father to come and talk to him in the car, and he then told his father that he had nothing to do with this offense, that he only agreed to sign a statement because he was being tortured and assaulted, and that further that they were forcing him to agree that he had committed this offense with some of the Buthelezi brothers, and he told them that he was being kept mainly at the police station in Pretoria called Villaria, and after that then they brought the mother, then the cousin also, but individually to talk to him in the car. Each time those persons came to the car, he repeated to them the same denials and the same averments he made to his father. Therefore, he denies that he was involved in the commission of this offense. Now, with respect to accused number 2, he was arrested in phase 2, Rustenburg, where he resided and he was working at the mine in Rustenburg. He says it was on the evening of 16 June when 2 police officers arrived at his place. They told him that they were looking for a person, that they showed him the photos from the cell phone. That person had, from the photos that they showed to him, had tattoos. He had a gold inlet on one of his tooth, and also he had that prison gang insignia tattoo of the 28th on his arm. Similarly, like accused number 1, he was over a period of time assaulted until he also signed incriminating statements, 2 incriminating statements, and having done so, he also denies that he was involved in the commission of this offense. Those are my instructions.
Noma ngokusho kanjalo.
Okay, thank you. One minute, Mr. Sibiya.
Mr. Sibiya, sicela usukuma.
You heard what your counsel was saying when he was enunciating your section 115 statement.
Ukuzwile ke lokhu oqeda ukushiwo ummeli wakho na manje ekusho ke ethi yiloko wena okushoyo ukuthi kwenzeka. Umzwila ngithi.
Yeah, regarding
Yes.
your defense. You
Yes,
heard
my
it,
lord. Yes, my lord.
understood.
Yes, my lord.
You confirm that, sir?
Uyakuvuma lokho.
Okay, fine.
Yes, my lord, but it's just the 6th is the day that I was taken home, and then the beating was started on the 30th up until the 5th.
Okay. And then, yeah, I've corrected that. Fine. Is that the only correction?
Yiloko phela ofuna ukulungisa.
Hello.
Mr. Sweet. Also the fact that they were assaulting me together with the other people or in the company of others, it was not these that are here.
Okay. Any other thing to add, sir?
Corner win? I think that's fair, my lord.
Okay, thank you. Excuse less than 2 seasons.
Danzi.
Danzi. Excuse 2. Did you hear what your counsel said?
Ukuzwile
Your defense statement.
ukuzwile lokho kushiwo ummeli wakho ngawe la egcineni ethi ke iloko omtshele kona uthi kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi uze uboshwe. Ukuzwile?
Yeah, your
Yes, I
second
heard, my lord.
statement.
I heard it, my lord, but I wasn't assaulted for only one day. Sorry. Usawakhumbula? Usawakhumbula noma awusawakhumbuli? Okay. In 19. Okay. It's the dates that I can't remember anymore because, my lord, I was not kept at one police station. I moved around police station. But there's one date that I can remember, the date of the 19th, when I was taken back to Carltonville, where I first worked.
Is that all?
You got. Okay. After finishing assaulting me at night, my lord, they took me back to Rustenburg, where I was working. Wakusa ubani? Gininda, no? Okay, I just want to take the names, my lord. Gininda. Okay, to be Ubani? Mukhale. Mukhane and Nabani Mapena. Okay, and the other thing, my lord, is that what they arrested me for is something that I don't know. Even he even mentioned the accused number 3, accused number 4, number 5. I don't know them. Okay, I know accused number 5 by seeing him, but we are not acquaintances. He mentioned the names of the people that took him: Gininda, Mukhane, and Mapena.
Okay, is that all, sir?
That's correct, my lord.
Thank you.
Sabam.